All right, everyone. We're going to get the 215 session on building new audiences to implement freedom underway. My name is Brad Lips. I'm the CEO of an organization called Atlas Network, which is very proud to be a close ally and collaborator with Human Rights Foundation and with a number of people in this ecosystem that comes together at Oslo Freedom Forum. But it's also been so exciting these last few days to meet more of you and the activist crowd that comes reliably, and very happy that you're here as we get towards the end of our 3 days together. We're going to sprint to the finish line. We've had a lot of conversations these last days about um, how we fight repression in the present. And I don't want to diminish the importance of that at all, but my organization focuses a little bit differently, mostly on building for the future, which I see as very complementary. If you go back to the first morning when we heard from Lobsang Sanjay who runs that government in exile program for Tibet, he was making the case that taking the title of this year's Oslo Freedom Forum, yes, we need to dismantle dictatorship, but we also have to be attentive to what is going to come next. What are we building? And that's really going to be the focus of the next hour together. It's our focus at Atlas Network. It's the focus of the organizations that we get to partner with all over the world. Um, we will work with public policy think tanks and other civil society organizations that do their best to counter bad government policy and oppressive regimes. We also work, all over the world, including in other democracies, where the challenge is protecting the institutions of freedom and thinking about how do we build more constituencies for free society values that we hope will come to replace the bad governments that we see in so many parts of the world. As a quick example, I was so happy to see Maria Corina Machado on the big stage, getting a standing ovation across this audience. We got to know her some 20 years ago because of our involvement with a public policy think tank called Se Dice Libertad, which has provided a lot of the intellectual ammunition to those who were trying to counter the Chavez and then Maduro tyrannies, uh, laying a groundwork for what the future ought to look like for Venezuela. And we really think that pairing, those who are able to rally opposition to tyrannical regimes, pairing that with people who have a good understanding of the public policy framework and the values that should be part of the solution after a tyranny, that these things go hand in hand. Atlas Network works in more than 100 countries. This past fall, thanks to our friends at the Reynolds Foundation, we launched a program called the Reynolds Freedom Fellows to put a spotlight on some of the really heroic people that we get to work with in difficult parts of the world, whose work we wanted to encourage. We wanted to help their teams get trained up and more advanced and get more ambitious. And our 3 Reynolds Freedom Fellows we introduced last fall, and we're happy to be introducing them to you today. From your stage right back towards me, we have Christelle Mardini. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the Lebanese Institute for Market Studies. Next to her, we have Medeni Sungur, who is the founding president of Digimar Institute and the Quest Studio in Istanbul. Our 3rd Reynolds Freedom Fellow is not able to join us, but he's represented here by his brother and longtime collaborator, Husain Maschinetchian, who has been a translator and organizer of spaces for open dialogue in Iran. A man who was shot in January as part of the protest movement there, and who can illuminate some of the situation that we see in Iran. So I'm going to just ask my colleagues here on stage. We're going to go this way back, asking each of you to tell us a little bit about the context in which you're operating and the work that you've been undertaking, just to help kind of lay the groundwork so everybody understands the kind of work that you do. So Christelle, why don't you kick us off?
In the current context, we're currently operating, and for the first time in Lebanon, we have hope. We had a new cabinet formed in 2025, the first reform cabinet in Lebanon. So I'm going to start on a positive note. But before that, we had dark years. We had worked under the worst type of governments. We had shortages of goods, 4 hours of electricity per day, family wasting hour waiting for fuel, shortages of medicine, of bread, hospitals shutting down, people panicking. They don't know if they can find their medication. It was a nightmare. Not only that, at the same time, we got hit by a major currency devaluation where the Lebanese pound lost 95% of its value. Today, 100,000 Lebanese pound is actually equivalent to $1. So that's how much the currency had devaluated. So we had everything very expensive, and we also had shortages of good. Like it was sceneries that reminded a lot of people and reminded us of Venezuela. Even during these darkest times, we did not give up with the support of our partners and of the Atlas Network. We worked tirelessly to plant seeds for a free society. We had one thought in our mind. We needed to think about the future. We needed, to think about some policy change, some change. We forced the government to resolve the shortages problem. We managed to, spread awareness on sound economic policies to also resolve the devaluation of currency, which actually had some restoring of dignity to millions of people. So that's what we had been working on
That-
in the past years.
That's fantastic. And we'll dig a little bit more into why you picked those wedge issues and how you implemented some of those fantastic changes we've
Yeah.
seen. But let's go to Medeni.
Thank you, Brett. So, democratic decline have been one of the most fundamental phenomenons that has been studied in the starting from 2000s in the world, and Turkey has been like one of the poster childs. And in the populist playbook, like the slow erosion of the institutions, etc. And right now we are also like competing with Lebanon in terms of our currency devaluation. We kind of lost also around 95-96% of our currency value in the course of last 7-8 years. On top of that, I think we are right now going through the later stage of the erosion of democratic institutions right now, where the justice system, media is under strict control of the government, and the crackdowns on independent media is increasing. Whereas, like throughout this last 2 decades, I've first founded Turkey's first grassroots liberal youth movement, then moved on to the civil first pro-liberty policy think tank, and then to the first explanatory journalism short form focused media in Turkey. And recently we basically started to spread this, I'm going to say, meta skill to other democratic actors, NGOs, individuals who want to use these platforms for idea communication and basically delivering their messages, what kind of Turkey they're looking for to other organizations. So we are basically spreading the skill to other democratic actors.
Fantastic. And now, Husain, tell us a little bit about the situation you're navigating in Iran and the kind of work that you've traditionally done with the opposition there.
Before I begin, I want to thank Atlas Network for their support and this opportunity they gave me. I'm very grateful. The situation in Iran is terrible, and it's very difficult to be hopeful in this kind of situation. Many brave people paid an enormous price for liberty and freedom, and for what they are standing up for. Many families lost their loved ones, and many activists were imprisoned. Many people feel exhausted by years of repression. So I don't want to minimize the suffering or pretend that the path forward is clear. But at the same time, when I look back at the work my brother began years ago, I don't measure success only by political outcomes. I look at it. I look at what happened culturally and intellectually. So when this work started, many ideas about individual liberties, open societies, free markets, and limited governments were largely absent from public discussion in Persian. There were few platforms, few translations, and very few communities where these ideas could be explored seriously. Um, and I think what impressed me most was seeing people encounter these ideas for the first time and then carry them forward themselves. Students became writers, readers became translators, and participants also become organizers. So I think there's a very hopeful future for the society and for people. I see.
Yeah, I'd like to stay on this for a minute because I think this really gets to the sort of the philanthropic theory of change that we operate under, and it's one that requires a frustrating level of patience and perseverance. We never know when there's going to be opportunities for real change in countries, and I'm of the belief that you can't, click your fingers and swoop in at a time that's opportunistic if you haven't laid the groundwork for years. And I'm now old enough to remember, it was 17 or 18 years ago we first started to work with your brother, and his vision was, we need translations in Persian of the basics of John Locke and Adam Smith and then more modern authors. And from this flowered a publishing platform, like sort of an academic journal that was highly read, that birthed discussion groups. And I remember along the way being told by your brother Mohammed that the intelligentsia coming out of the better universities of Iran was sort of changing. And some of the protests from years earlier that were in reaction to, inflation or specific instances were starting to transform into sort of knowing what we're for instead. And he gave a wonderful talk for us a couple of years ago at an Atlas Network event, reflecting on how after October 7th, the mullahs wanted to see public uprisings in favor of what Hamas had done to Israel, and perhaps to lead to a wider conflict. And the papers in Tehran, as I understand it, wound up showing pictures of anti-Israeli protests in Paris and in Istanbul, but they couldn't find them homegrown, and that was part of a sea change where the theocrats had lost the youth. Am I getting that more or less right? Or
Exactly. Yeah, they couldn't find any pictures, and that's why they didn't publish any pictures from those protests in the newspaper and the media. Uh, and I think, yeah, the mullahs wanted us to sacrifice our lives, our youth, our energy to fight um, with Israel, and we simply didn't want to do that. Why would we? And so, yeah, they invested enormous resources and attention. Um,
yeah, and it's sort of horrifying to now be in this place where war came anyway. Many of the protesters that have been inspired by some of the intellectual work that you were a part of are dead, and it's a moment to just to embrace how heart sickening all of this is. But I think that the value proposition of what's been done over a generation hasn't necessarily been wasted, and that you're still waiting for this moment of change. And I think, I don't think any of us would try to predict what's going to happen next in Iran, and I trust that there's good that's going to come from the work you've done. let's get to Medeni for a second, because Turkey's also had a really interesting 2 decades since you've been involved in this. Lots of interesting history, and tell us where you are now, and maybe how your strategy's been evolving as a consequence.
Um, um, I'd like to start by saying that so when I first started my civil society journey about like 2 decades ago, Turkey was like more or less on the right track, like with right kind of reforms, EU anchor, trying to become an EU member, etc. So it basically like turned completely southward along the way. And beginning like from those years, um, I think it's more or less the same today. That it has never been only about being against something, but also, but primarily being for something. So throughout like different phases of my journey in the civil society, I think the core locus was basically um, helping people imagine an alternative Turkey, which is based on fundamental rights, rule of law, free markets, and this was at the locus of it. And along the way, of course, like we kind of ended up in having. I'm doing a lot of publication right now, reaching a lot of young people. So we ended up in a place where our publications, our content is mostly right now against the specific policies of the government and the Turkey's trajectory right now. But we are always keeping the element of we are actually fundamentally for an alternative Turkey. This is the first thing. And the second thing is along the way, the spaces where people can speak up their ideas, speak up um, their aspirations for Turkey really narrowed down, along with the policy impact pathways. Especially through the mainstream media, there was the space for democratic actors has shrunk significantly, and came the rise of social media along the way. And I think we have been one of the earliest organizations that utilized the rise of social media very well. First, the YouTube, and then to the short form media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, etc., to push out the democratic ideals, to push out an alternative vision for Turkey, and but we have seen along the way a lot of other organizations are basically lacking. So right now we are publishing and we are reaching a lot, fundamentally to the youth of Turkey, the up and coming generation of Turkey. Um, but right now, a lot of other organizations who are doing in this like small space, the shrinking civil society in Turkey, are also picking up pace in terms of whatever practical issues they are working on, like women's rights, election security, um, like all the range of democratic activities in Turkey. I'm also sitting in the boards of other organizations because it's a very small space that is doing like very practical work that is responding today's challenges, like protecting journalists from arbitrary detentions, etc., etc. But I fundamentally see what I do as like a proactive approach. And I think it is being picked up like to a certain extent. Right now, the entire opposition's main platform is basically our fundamental talking points 10 years ago. That's the seeds that we've been trying to seed 10 years ago. Again, rule of law, independence of judiciary, accountability, transparency of the government actions. So I think like this perspective is keeping me up and good, although like we have a lot of challenges today. What we are doing, like the long-term work we are doing, is basically being picked up.
Yeah. And now it'll be fun to hear from Christelle about a country that has gone through very dark times, that has had a terrorist threat among you that seems to be mitigated a little bit right now. And as you said, that there's a friendly cabinet that likes to listen to your ideas where you used to have to really push. So tell us a little bit about for a think tank that suddenly has a window where people are welcoming your recommendations and you're not just kind of informing the opposition talking points. What are you guys doing?
Yes, so I want to say something that's the beauty of our work. So during the darkest years, you plant the seeds. Even during the darkest years when we had bad government, we were able to do the wins of shortages of good, of devaluation of currency. So we were able to do some policy change. It may, but we also planted the seeds to work with reform-minded government. That is our hope today. And today, with the reform-minded government, we are working twice as hard, because they listen, and we are trying as much as we can to pass as many reforms as possible, because this is it may be once in a lifetime opportunity, and we need those reforms to happen. We are fighting on different fronts. On the electricity, we are still fighting. On the monetary, we are fighting. We are fighting on introducing competition and in vital sectors.
And maybe for those of us who, I'm an American who just turns on lights and they always work. Like,
Yes.
why is it that you have had the reliability problems in Lebanon historically? And what have you guys done to change it so we have more context for those of us who haven't
Well,
heard?
I'm gonna say the context of the situation. It's a long story to explain. It's also too technical to explain why we had all these shortages of electricity. We only have 4 hours of electricity. But what I will say briefly, that what we are working on currently is that we are advising the ministry, we are advising the regulatory authority that allows new entrants to the market sector. We are advising the Board of Electricity in Lebanon to actually open the market for competition, to actually allow for private companies, for businesses to invest in the sector. So I think so.
Yeah, so my impression was always that, the government wanting to control who was providing electricity gave them a chance for corruption. It also meant that the Lebanese government was running at a deficit because they were subsidizing so much, and there was no competition that would deliver reliable power to consumers. That was kind of at the mercy of political deals, but that's been changing.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
Yes, that's true. Actually, so there has, okay, I'm gonna talk about something. So I'm gonna explain a little bit about the electricity sector. Bear with me. So there has been a law in Lebanon not applied since 2002 that actually enabled the private sector to be licensed into the, into the electricity market by a regulatory authority. This law hasn't been applied because previous ministers wanted control over the sector. They wanted, as much kickbacks and as much, the corruption scheme that we all know about. The current government, after years of policy work and LIMS pushing, for these sound economic reforms, the new appointed minister actually enacted these two policy reform, ending the state's financing of the Electricité du Liban, the publicly owned electricity company, and he appointed the regulatory authority. So these are two major wins. They have been long championed by LIMS. They can actually fix the electricity problem. So that's the window of opportunity that we are working on currently.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Medeni, let's also, you'd said, we're needing to oppose a lot, but we also have a clear vision of what we're for. Can you give us like a sketch if you have the opportunity that Christelle has had with Lebanese Supermarket Studies in 10 years? What do you hope the Turkish freedom movement's been able to achieve? What are some of the focus points for Turkey?
Well, we are living in crazy times. It's very hard to project. I think that's the hardest to ever to project in 10 years, like in the life cycle of like humanity.
I just want a wish list, not a predictions.
Yeah.
We won't hold you to it. Yeah.
The wish list is basically so when I first started by society journey, like ours was the only youth movement, like back in the only liberal youth movement in Turkey. Right now, tens more is basically sparking up, like in different kind of liberal movements. liberal youth movements. That's a major source of hope. And the second one is basically, I think the biggest hope, biggest wish for me is basically we are at a place that we are in heavy restoration of our democratic institutions. We are like all of our civil society is heavily involved in and hopefully having a government basically cherishing the democratic principles. The opposition having them as like in top of their list. Of course, they have all kind of challenges, but right now, political challenges, but they are basically, I mean, implementing the democratic restoration and a lot of civil society institutions with their different kinds of expertise are joining this process, and we are heavily restorating like all of the damaged institutions, and we are getting our country back into the right track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's helpful. Hussein, I definitely will not ask you for a prediction of what's to come in Iran with all the uncertainty right now. But I was thinking it would be interesting to pivot off this question of like, what are you working for? My impression is that part of what has been so wonderful about the work that your brother started and so many have joined is this sense that you've made it fashionable to have sort of cosmopolitan values about tolerance, the dignity of the individual, religious toleration. But there's also an economic entrepreneurship aspect to this. I wonder if you'll speak to that a little bit.
Yes. So when people hear economic freedom, they often think only about the markets and business. But at a deeper level, economic freedom is about giving people the ability to make choices about their lives. And what I wish for and what I look for is the economic freedom that people can have. A society that respects individual choice um, economically is often more likely to respect individual choice in other areas as well. And did I answer correctly?
Yeah, that's well, however you answer is correct. But yeah, it's been helpful for me to see that. I think for all of you who have seen countries sort of ravaged by hyperinflation, that sometimes we focus on some of the civil liberties aspects at the exclusion of the economic ones, and part of the most of Atlas Network's partners are kind of working on both of these side by side because we see private property and markets that allow free enterprise as complementary to the rule of law and democratic institutions. And I thought it was interesting to learn a little bit about your own entrepreneurship in your personal endeavors, right? So you're kind of
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, before I got involved with our magazine, I wanted to have uh, economic freedom from the governments because if not, you have to be connected to governments um, to have your income from them, and I never wanted that. So I did some works. I started my own small businesses online, and I also wanted to help other people to become entrepreneurs themselves, to start their own businesses, and yeah, I think that helps a lot. That helps people a lot to find freedom in their lives, and
Yeah, and I think it's underappreciated how the more you have sort of economic power being delivered in other parts of the society that's not directly under government control, that can have an acceleration type of effect on freedom movements and resistance movements in oppressive societies. We're gonna ask for good questions among this audience in a minute. I do, before we turn to you guys, want to ask Hussein to share just a little bit about the personal experience you had in January, which I know might be tough to talk about, but I think it's important for people to hear your experience in the protest.
yeah. To be honest, I never set out looking for confrontation with the regime. Like many Iranians, I wanted a normal life, the ability to study, to work, to build a future and live with dignity. But over time, the space for ordinary life become smaller and smaller. And the Islamic Republic kept pushing people to their limits. It wasn't just one policy or one event. It was the accumulation of censorship, repression, corruption, economic um, hardship, and denial of basic rights, basic freedoms. Many people felt they were constantly being told how to think, how to live, what to do, what should they sacrifice for. And at a certain point, many of us felt we had no real choice but to speak out. Not because we were seeking conflicts, but because remaining silent meant accepting a situation that had become intolerable. And so, yeah, in those 2 nights, they killed us, they shot us, they tortured us, and in those 2 nights, 40,000 people got killed. It was just a number on the body bags, and I'm sure there were even more than that number. And even after those 2 nights, people were in hospitals, and we couldn't go to hospital to get um, fixed. And those people who went to hospitals, they got shots in the head. Uh, and when they found them, they were patched up, but still got shots. And it was a terrible time. They wanted to get all the hope from us and give us this feeling that resistance is futile, and we are powerless. We don't have any agency. We don't have any power to change anything. But I'm sure that they are not successful in that, and people are still hopeful in their hearts, and they are still doing what they can, whatever in their power, whatever they have on hands to change their life, change the society, change life for the better. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, but, hearing about you in January being shot in both legs, knowing that you couldn't go to the hospitals because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard was shooting those who were wounded because they knew they had been protesting. We're so thankful to this community. I know we turned to our friend Max Reynolds, who was able to help
Yes.
with the getting you to Georgia to safety. Our friends from Georgia with our think tank network were helpful there, and it's great. I think if there is a source of inspiration that should keep us hopeful is that we do have this ecosystem. Atlas Network tries to build it. You feel it viscerally here at Oslo Freedom Forum of people who care about the freedom of others and recognize those who are sacrificing and who are in need. So we're very happy you're with us today, and heartsick about your colleagues who aren't. That's a tough transition for those of you who wanted to raise your hand for the first question, but let's see. We got one in the front row. Can we get a microphone here, please?
Professor Dr. Husain Demir. I am a human rights law professor and professor in exile in Berlin and president of Human Rights Defenders, this NGO in Berlin. I'm going to make a little short comment, and ask something to Medeni Sungur, because I find him very hopeful and optimistic. Because when it's my job anyway, examine Turkey since last 12 years, the rule of law is greatly deteriorated, and many social media and media outlets closed down by the government, and thousands of people been imprisoned. Some had to leave country, and even last few days, they, with the help of court, obviously, appointed a leader to main opposition party. So Turkey is not even a hybrid democracy anymore, and it's getting worse and worse. The main reason for this is the opposition is not united against the government. Everybody is waiting till it's their turn, like the main opposition party now, and because it came for Kurds, and they didn't do anything. Even they vote for Selahattin Demirtaş's immunity to be removed, and then now it's Özgür Özel, the leader. He's going to be charged. Probably he's going to be in prison like İmamoğlu, and we have nothing to do. We can do nothing apart from using international law. And Turkey obviously don't obey with the law. We have many Strasbourg court decision. But what I am just you said about economic things. I think economic situation is not the reason. It's the consequence of having less democracy, less rule of law, and Turkey is going worse and worse. And I don't believe that if all the opposition, all the democratic forces unite their forces and fight against this, there will be hope. And I have to say that there is not only obviously Digimar, there are many others, human rights organizations trying to be voice of the oppressed people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Excuse me.
Simon?
What was the question again?
The question is about this.
Why am I hopeful?
Are you hopeful? Yeah.
Yeah, you've been hopeful. So how can you find that strength to be hopeful?
Okay.
I can't.
I will just give like a personal story because like I have a younger brother who just recently attended the national exam in Turkey, and who went through like a near suicidal deep depression period. Like he had to be hospitalized for a while, and this happened after he got like in the top 100 among like 1.7 million who attended the national exam. He got like one of the best universities, etc., etc. And he told me, I mean, what would happen even if I get to the best university? I mean, if you're not connected to the party, if you're not like, I mean, the trajectory. This is how what's going on in Turkey is reflected in the youth right now. And I like maybe it's not in my disposition to be like to give it to them, because it will fundamentally hamper our work. But I totally agree with what you said. I mean, Turkey is going through like one of the darkest times right now. So the President Erdogan has almost total control of everything at this point. So there are three sources of hope for me, which is first one is Turkey has never gone like 80% Erdogan like throughout this life. So it's always like neck to neck. It's like 51 to 49 right now. Yes, like the latest big move was basically completely disabling the main opposition party and like giving it back to the guy who lost against him in the previous election through courts. So it's I mean, if you look at it from within this moment, it's a very dark time. But the first thing is basically like there's a huge other part, like other half of the country is still through the ballot box, like through despite all the conditions, people are still like speaking up. There are like, as you said, of course, I mean, I'm also part of like many. There are many courageous people who are speaking up against what's going on right now. They are like in solidarity against what's going on. The second source of inspiration is the current regime in Turkey is, I mean, this is my political assessment, will not be able to sustain itself beyond beyond president's lifetime. So it is a very bespoke, very custom, like built around one man. I don't think anybody else who doesn't have like remotely same legitimacy in the eyes of the people will be able to maintain it. So this is the second source of inspiration. So kind of it's bound by the lifetime.
Till he dies.
No, like I mean, like so I don't think the Turkish system, because we don't have oil or anything. So and this regime is heavily externalizing the costs of the democratization, the process going through to the large segments of the society. Like a lot of people are living under very hard times right now, like economic wise. They're like arbitrarily detained, etc., etc. This is also creating a lot of inherent tensions, which cannot, I think, be sustained beyond the president. And the third thing is, as I said, like even despite everything, our friends from Georgia is here. The youth movements are sparkling up, and I'm basically hoping that we had like a small part in this. A lot of people are, although like the civil space is shrinking, there are always like new initiatives coming up, and in different democratic fields, like to stand up against it. So these are my three sources of inspiration. I'm sorry if I misrepresented. Like I don't want to just like say everything is bad, etc., etc. This is not in my disposition. Of course, it's a very dark time right now. Like especially if you're living inside the country, it is very difficult. But I mean, I see hope in the future.
We have a couple of questions in the back. If we can get a microphone back there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the panel. Thank you, Brad. My name is Mohammed Abdullah. I'm from Syria. I want to pick on Lebanon, Crystal. I'm half Lebanese, so I have a stake on the case. Lebanon went through a lot of conflict, but also a lot of agreements. Doha agreement, Taif agreement, and then Doha agreement, and then Abda agreement. And now there's a negotiation happening with Israel, with the U.S. sponsorship. Never worked. Those agreements never worked in terms of turning the country to be prosperous and benefit the constituents and the public. It endorsed the corruption of the politicians and endorsed like the elite, the same story. Where do you see the current agreement in terms of, or the current negotiation? Hopefully it lands on a peaceful resolution for everybody's interest. But do you see this going to benefit the public? My concern is usually when the geopolitics is debated, Israel and Hezbollah and the borders, the people are lost because it's not focused on the interests and the constituents, i.e. we'll end up with politicians more emboldened by the West, and they will be overlooked over their corruption, which is Lebanon's 3 million population, and they have $100 billion debt. Like, just imagine what's happening in the country. Thank you.
Thank you for the context of the country. So I want to circle back on something that Taki said that would emphasize my answer. So Taki lives in Iran, in a place where he had lost hope. And his idea was he wanted to be independent from the government, to build his own company, to be a competitor. So all these agreements and all these previous economic solutions that have been instilled in Lebanon, they empowered the government. They did not introduce competition. They did not introduce sound economic policies. No matter how much money you throw in the government, it's not enough if you do not throw them in the right direction. It's actually worse, because this is what we work on. And this is what we had been missing, and this is what we had been trying to instill for the past decade at LIMS, introducing competition, applying the electricity law that allows entrance, private entrance into the market, stopping the central bank from financing the government, stopping the central bank from printing money. So these economic policies are the right economic policies, and the money that has been wasted over the past years have been going into more public, spending, which had made the situation even worse. So that's on the economic front. And now you are telling me about the current situation. Well, the war is over our head. We have a lot of bombs, but what we are focusing on are small wins that could actually make long-term change. We will not be able to affect, the whole situation. There are big players, playing in the region, and we cannot influence those big players. But what we can influence in small policy changes that actually have long-term effects For example, stop printing money. It had long effect on the devaluation of the currency. For example, applying the 2003 law in electricity, appointing the regulatory authority that would actually have long-term positive spill or a change on the electricity sector and many other sectors. So that's the work that we've been doing with the Atlas Network and our partners. And yeah, so that's
I think it's a really interesting thing. Just kind of it brings the conversation back to this question about the theory of change, and I think it's a really important one for all of us who are here in Oslo. You can attend some conferences, and it's sort of about the geopolitics. And if the world was your chessboard, what would you try to do? And that is kind of an interesting academic one, but it's one that few of us really get to influence at that level. And then there's those who are in the streets protesting, who know what they want to tear down, but sometimes I worry that that's not enough, that we need to also be looking for, how do we institutionalize efforts so they can last as long as this battle is going to go on, and it's going to go on for a long time. And where do we find these wedge issues that can either create cultural change and a constituency for a more positive vision for a country, or can to change the rules of the game a little bit, to just give some people more freedom, more economic opportunity, and that also has a destabilizing effect in a really positive way from how I see it. I was kind of laughing with these guys yesterday when we sat down, because I had to admit that if you'd asked me a couple years ago, wow, Atlas Network has done a lot in Argentina for 20 years. How are those investments paying off? And when that country was hitting just kind of the economic rock bottom, it would have been tough to say that we were really proud of what had happened there. But some of our partners have been instrumental in defeating a Peronist attack on independent media. And that sort of created the window that allowed Javier Milei to have an audience and to start talking about, like, we need to do a radical U-turn and try to revive a somewhat dead private sector, and we have to do some big changes there. And this is still obviously an unfinished story. There's lots of challenges, but there's been a lot of signs that have been encouraging. For some of us who really are big believers in the Austrian economics school that Javier Milei learned sort of from a lot of our partners and the academics around them. There is a new course, that a country is changing in a fundamental way. And I think that our partners were able to play a somewhat pivotal role in making that at least a possibility. And again, it's really frustrating, because you don't know when you're going to have a chance to see those changes kind of come into practice. But again, like laying the groundwork, having credible organizations that are doing important things, that I think is the most cost-effective strategy I've seen out there. So that's why we double down on folks like these. There were other questions. Yeah, we got one right there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin Hefter. I was very moved, Husain, by your story that you shared in January. It's not easy to share, and I want you to know that sharing it is not in vain, that we in this room hear you. We're going to carry your message forward.
Thank you.
And my question is in the aftermath of something like that, what does civil society need in Iran, and how can everybody in this room, the international community, help? And I'm thinking both big, small, ranging from mental health support to funding to like whatever it is, whatever comes to mind. What should we all know are the needs, the range of needs that that the people here, the people listening, can serve?
Thank you so much for your support and for your kind words. I think first and foremost, what we need is understanding what we are going through, and because it's like we are fighting on both on two sides. First side is with our governments, and the other side is with people in the West, because how can I put it? We know that so many people in the West hates Trump and hates his politics, but at the same time, we want them to understand that he kind of helped us with this war, and so many of us got killed in the streets, and we couldn't take out one high-ranking official of IRGC or the government. And what he did was, in a day, he just eliminated so many of them. And so the thing is, we really want an understanding about the situation, and we don't want them um, to be against us somehow. And yeah.
Yeah. One way I'd interpret this, and to tell me if I'm getting it wrong, but I think that one of the things that a lot of us in this room really believe in is that, you know, we need truth and transparency wherever we can get it, and maybe especially right now in Iran with continuing internet blackouts. And I think, as you said, kind of like a media reporting that is often just kind of seen through the prism of the hyper polarized politics that we have in the U.S. and more broadly in the West, that the truth on the ground can become sacrificed to that. And I think that's maybe a reminder that all of us who care for the plight of Iranians going through a horrible tragedy right now should come at this with a lot of curiosity. Am I getting that sort of right? Is that the message?
Yes, exactly. We need all the help that we can get from everyone, even from someone that's we are not agreeing with, or we don't like him, or we don't like his agenda or politics. But in a way, whatever help that we can get, we are thankful for that. And also, yeah, we need a lot of help in terms of internet and spreading the word and what is going on inside the country. If you can just spread the word, spread the information of what is going on, the massacre of people. I haven't seen so many people talk about this, that the government is killing all these people, and yet the Western governments try to make an agreement with our governments. And this is such a shame to see that after all these things that we are going through, they are still working with Ayatollah. They are trying to make peace with them. They are working with them. On the surface, they say they put a lot of sanctions, but none of those sanctions really work. It just puts pressure on ordinary people. The government people still have all the resources, all the whatever that they want to do. They have a long reach hand in every countries. They are bothering dissidents and bullying people. If Western government could stop working with Islamic Republic, that would be the best, I think, the best thing that can happen.
We've got time for a couple more questions. I think we got two down here, first row and second row. Maybe we'll take both questions, and then we'll ask panelists to chime in. Then.
My name is Arash Mifrayan. My question to
Be a little closer to the microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
You hear me better, I hope. My name is Arash Mifrayan. When I was kid, I was forced to enchant Death to America and Death to Israel. I assume you know what I'm talking about. And I lost also my friend in January, my childhood friend. And your strength is an inspiration for all of us. So my question is, we know that Islamic Republic have been pouring a lot of money, billions into, we call it the bees, where they are spreading a lot of misinformation across Iranian. And also in Western countries where polarization is, it has become a big problem, is a challenge. We see people on far left, on far right. And when I see at Middle East, especially in Iran, Lebanon, Turkey, and the whole Middle East, the Middle East is a very rich country, rich in culture, lot of ethnicities, lot of differences. That's the vulnerability of our society in the Middle East, because we have so ancient culture. We have become more intolerant in each other's opinions, in each other's
Get to a
background.
question.
So,
Okay,
sorry, my apologies. So how can we fight the misinformation in Iran? Because I know that unification of Iranian is the key to fight this sadistic Islamic regime.
fantastic. Thank you for that. Let's also get the question behind you on the floor also, then we'll ask panelists to comment. Thank you.
Hi, loud Iranian here. I say my question first.
We can't.
Yeah, we can't hear you very well. Thank you.
I'm a loud Iranian here in Norway, as Espen Barth Eide called us. My question is, what can we everyday people do? Because we are aware of the Islamic Republic's nature, and the idea in the idea in Norway is to keep Norway's democracy and security. We have to have a dialogue with the Islamic Republic. So, what can we everyday people do to change this?
Okay. Do you have thoughts on either of these two questions, fighting disinformation, and are there things that people here in Norway and other countries can do? I think you've already talked about, maybe it would be helpful for them to know some reliable information resources that they could turn to that would help help them understand what truth they should be trying to spread to people who may make a difference.
This is very hard and challenging to find real information because, as you mentioned perfectly, they are pouring a lot of money to misinformation. They have a lot of agents. They give while they shut down the internet for 85 days in Iran, they gave access to internet. They give they give a few people some access to internet just to spread the misinformation and talk about the goods in the country and not talking about the problems. But I think how we can fight against this is to be in contact with people on the ground and maybe hear their stories, maybe hear ordinary people's stories and what they are saying, because so many of the news outlets are not really reliable and we cannot, I think, trust them.
It's helpful. We've only got a couple minutes left. I would like to maybe bring Christelle and Medeni back into the conversation, because it is like so inspiring to hear about Husain and just the showing the resilience that that means so much to us when we know you've gone through such dark periods. But maybe also, my wife adores Christelle. How could you not adore Christelle? But she'll check in on her every time she hears about bombs dropping in Beirut, and we always have Christelle saying, "Well, I made it to the office anyway." And how do you find the resilience to keep on with the work that you're focused on?
We have to go to the office because I want to link this to the shortages of good that I mentioned before, because of the subsidy program and the price controls that led to smuggling to Syria by those paramilitary groups. So these smuggling to across the border actually solved a funding problem to these military groups. So we have to work. We have to put an end to these bad economics, to these policies. And today, these same group want to take the government down because, especially if Iran wins in Hormuz, they want to take the government down. That's why I was saying that this is the window of opportunity. We need to get this government to solve the real problems in an irreversible way, in policy change, and like in electricity and other sector, and to help this government gain credibility. So a lot of people are thinking about the war, but we have to go to the office because we need to think about the future, about what comes next.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe you can close us out with a note of optimism. You already explained why you're hopeful, but what does it take for people in this room to stay focused and resilient?
Actually, I forgot one factor, which is like Turks disproportionately participate in the elections, so it's not like and the ballot box. That's why ballot box is kind of intact. And like in any elections, 5 to 10 million people basically organized to protect the ballot box. Of course, the process is very extremely skewed, but like what goes into the ballot box comes out. At least it was like that so far. And like anytime I'm going back to Turkey after giving a speech like this, I like in the passport control, I have a slight chill in my spine. Like, is it? Am I being taken like this time? So after I pass, I just get it. So I've been telling this to my friends. I'm not getting my inspiration from the likes of Steve Jobs, but the people I basically find myself extremely lucky to have met with like throughout throughout my civil society work around the world. So I know my friends who are like in extremely much more difficult and conditions that are trying to keep up, like in Africa, in Latin America, and in our neighbors, basically. Like so, this is the first thing, and the second thing is basically I also have a lot of my friends who have been jailed, who have their like entire lives like accumulations have been confiscated, etc., etc. So I'm basically like drawing inspiration. I also have a like specific Lebanese friend who's in the business community in Lebanon, and despite everything, he always like sends the hope of optimism. So his name is Andre, and like I always say to him, like, if Andre is not giving up, I cannot.
Yeah.
So I basically get it like from my peers who are doing this incredible work, both in Turkey and around the world, and hopefully we will prevail.
Fantastic. I love that, and I really appreciate everybody here taking the time to learn about these country-specific challenges that we've heard about in Iran, Turkey, and Lebanon. I hope you see why we're so proud to have these three individuals as our Reynolds Freedom Fellows at Atlas Network. We're around if you want to learn more about their work, and if you want to learn more about how Atlas tries to inculcate this sense of a worldwide freedom movement bounded by camaraderie and shared values, and hopefully complementing the important work of all the dissidents and all the people that come together at Oslo Freedom Forum. But help me thank my panelists one more time. Thank you.